Thank you so much for staying with us. The Landless People's Movement hosted its policy conference and the second People's Assembly recently. Now, joining us to shed more light on the outcome is the Deputy Leader and Chief Strategist, that is Henny Seibeb. A very good evening, Mr. Seibeb. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, and I'm always humbled to be here.
All right. For those that do not know what the policy conference and the ones that might have missed the first, People's Assembly recently, what would you describe it as?
Yes, we held the first policy conference for LPM from 7th to the 8th of December under the theme deepening and reaffirming the restoration of the dignity of our people.
Right.
And then under that we had several topics ranging from agrarian reform, HIV and AIDS, amongst others. It came up, SMEs and the financing capacity of the SMEs, and so on. The creative art industry, sports, how it can contribute to the GDP. We discussed the mineral beneficiation and how the communities could benefit from it. So it was a mouthful, yet it was not, so we did not cover all the topics under the earth. The idea is to start first, and then next year we are going to have perhaps another review, and then so that we could cover all elements of the main policy themes: safety and security, health, how climate change affects the access to medication, etc. So those are the things that we are going to have. On Saturday, the 8th and the 9th of December, we had our second People's Assembly, where we have elected our party's top leadership. And we have also, for the first time, as mandated by the Constitution, elected our convention, which is equivalent to SWAPO Central Committee, for example. Okay. So those were the mainstay of the weekend.
Very well. And what were the outcomes reached at the policy conference and the second People's Assembly?
The key thing is now that we have got, in certain areas, certain policy recommendations. What we'll do is to consolidate those policy recommendations. Remember, the premise is on poverty reduction in this country. It's very high. We also discuss how we can use our national budget to respond to the challenges of the youth unemployment. So some of these things we are going to have next year to consolidate and to have pillars and then provide to the government, the national government now, as well as to the executive, what we have decided, the outcomes of it. There were more or less like 450 delegates at the People's Assembly. So these are the outcomes that we must share. And some of the issues are also dealing with democracy in our country, Southern Africa. I just heard you talking about DRC elections. I was there last year, December. Right. And we have seen the tension between DRC and Rwanda, as you rightly mentioned it. So those are some of the things that we were looking at. We discussed and delved about it in a much more greater detail.
Very well. You just really briefly mentioned about some of the policies that you're trying to put in place, but how do you envision these policies making a tangible impact on the Landless People's Movement or the party at large?
Look, we are already governing at the regional council level and at the local authorities level. So what we said is that, look, we have to fast track the provision of land, urban, to solve the urban housing crisis. We had a paper presented by the LPM policy researcher on that specific topic. So what we are going to do is, whereas our local authorities, like for example in Keetmanshoop, Karasper, are doing this much, Marienthal, we need to add more. The capacity must be provided. And the key issue here for us is the bulk municipal servicing of for example, the land, the sanitation, and so on. So whereas we are doing so much, we need to add more, was the key message. And we also have to look at how do we create employment for the youth in the regions that we are governing. Some of it will be coming as motions and some other interventions in the parliament. And also, as I said, last time we met President Kainkop and gave him our document, what we think of in terms of green hydrogen, etc. So this time we are going to channel all our policy recommendations to the President, the executive, and so on, because we believe that we have provided and articulated good and just policies. And when we have good and just policies, we believe that it must be shared with the rest of Namibians, even at the local authorities and the regional councils where we don't govern. We must share this with the whole of the country.
Very well. And can you share some of the specific highlights or maybe measures or initiatives that emerged as priorities for the party moving forward?
Yeah, the priorities really is to implement whatever we are saying. The key priority is poverty reduction, employment creation, especially amongst the youth sector, and then inequality must be reduced. We were also concerned about the energy prices and so on. Some of these things should be discussed. Energy poverty is very high in this country, provision of water, and to accelerate such to rural communities, especially the indigent, the poor, and the unemployed, is a real challenge in this country. So urban housing, food sovereignty is a key. We had a nice and interesting topic about from farming to the plate. How do we ensure that nobody goes hungry in this country? So these were some of the challenges. The biggest one also that come out is the funding gaps in the SME sector. People don't really have money. The banks are increasingly becoming conservative in their funding approach. And so we were thinking, what are the modalities that we must come up with so that we can ignite our micro, small, and medium enterprises? That was amongst some of the key issues. And also the key one is, how do we internationalize our struggle? We had a good discussion with Dr. Abdusara Karim of the University of the Western Cape, as well as with Dr. Ndumba Kamwanya. They gave us examples in Brazil, for example, the MST, the workers' movement, how they have captured power and have expanded and are now implementing pro-poor policies with the return of Delula. And also here, Dr. Ndumba really tried to bring forth how we can globalize our social justice struggles here in Namibia, forging links and networks of cooperation with the global social movements that are in the same struggle with us. And how do we link with those ones in Western Sahara, Palestine, in Colombia, for example, in Mexico, and so on. So those are the global struggles that we must wage in the context of COP28. What is happening? That was the key.
All right, Mr. Henny Seibeb, thank you so much for making the time to talk to us, and all the best with the party's endeavors.
Thank you very much, and I'm also wearing a very beautiful shirt.
Thank you so much. All right, after a short break, we engage the Ministry of Agriculture, Water and Land Reform. Stay with us.